Hi there, I'm Dave Cummings, the Communications Director for New Hampshire Realtors. And what we've got for you here today is a training session on FastStats and InfoSparks, two very important tools that are part of our mission to be and to make you the voice for real estate in New Hampshire. What you're about to see was conducted at the NHAR conference in September with a trainer named Aaron Dickinson. And I'm just here to introduce that training and show you where you'll need to log in to FastStats and InfoSparks on our homepage at NHAR.org. So I'm going to bring you to our homepage. Again, that's NHAR.org. And very simply on the homepage, right below this big photo of downtown Concord, you'll see two sections in red, FastStats and InfoSparks. So to get into these two features, you'll click on FastStats, which is open to the public, and you will not need a username or password. InfoSparks, you will need a username and password that will be prompted for you. Your username is going to be your email address, and your password is going to be your user ID number, used to be called your NRDS number. So for about the first 6 minutes of this video, you're going to learn about FastStats, which is one side of the data. And for the next 20 minutes or so, you're going to get a training session on InfoSparks, which is a little more complex. They're both very user-friendly. So first FastStats and then InfoSparks. Enjoy.
So we have 4 different reports that we're going to look at. The local market updates are new, and I'll come back to those in a minute. We're going to start off here first looking at the monthly indicators report, which is a report that you're already receiving, and so it's probably familiar to many of you. And so this report is for the entire state and gives us a big 50,000-foot view of the market. With this new interface, you will always get the most current report by default when you load it up, either by clicking on the map or hitting view report. But historical reports are also available here, so you can go back in time and pull up a historical report if you would like. You simply choose the previous month in the list and then load up the report. The next report is the quarterly data. This too is likely familiar to you. So this is quarterly updated at the county level here. And we can see, again, some of the same metrics that we were looking at before and see their quarter 2021 numbers versus the recent quarter in 2022, the year-over-year change, and see that for each of the counties, and see that separately for condos and single family. And again, this too, you can pull up historical reports. And then the final report that you already get here is the year-over-year data that's at the county level as well as statewide. And this, when we look at this here, this gives you historical counts and changes in price and sold units and days on market going all the way back to 1998. So those reports are all things that you've already received. However, now you get to see it in this nice new interface. And then we have the new report here is to look at local market updates, which are a one-page kind of executive summary report that we can pull up at the county level. So you can either choose the county based off of this list. We also have a bunch of city reports available, or I think it's easiest to navigate in through the map. And so you can simply click into any of the map locations, and you can either pull up a local report or a county level report. And so here we are looking at sales activity in Concord, and this report is also going to be updated monthly. And we can see stats for single family here, the same kind of metrics we looked at before. See August of this year versus August of last year, that percent change year over year. And then the same data in a year-to-date format. And then below, we can see the year-over-year change in some of those key metrics. And then we can also see the trend of the median sales price for the area we're looking at versus the entire state as a comparison. So one of the questions that sometimes comes up is, which areas are appreciating faster, or what's a good place to invest in? And, it's a complicated question if you really get into the details, but one of the things is just, how are prices moving in an area versus the region or another area. So this makes it easy to show them that example. And then because this is a one-page report that gives you all those key stats for that area, These reports then end up being very easy to reference those data points for any of those locations, or to print out a couple of these and compare them side by side. Because regardless of if you're looking at a city report or at the county report, they're all formatted identically. The only thing that's changing is the area being reported. And so these reports are newer to the market. We're actually just going live with them here now. So we have a few historical reports available, but as we go forward, this archive will show you more. So if you come back in a year, you'll have every month report that you can still access. So that's the FastStats system, and that is all available on your association's website as of today. So in summary here, we've got those local market updates. They're a one-page executive summary report, either at the city or county level. The monthly indicators report, which you've already been receiving, which gives you tons of information and goes into each metric one per page and kind of breaks that out in different perspectives. The quarterly report, and that year-over-year historical data going back to 1998. So with InfoSparks, the beauty of this tool is that you can really kind of define what you want to run stats on and then see those metrics. And so when we first load up InfoSparks, we're typically going to be looking at the entire MLS region. And we have a lot of different metrics here at the bottom that we can go through, the same kinds of metrics we were looking at already. But I want to show you how you can tailor this to your market or to a segment of the market you're interested in. So we'll start there. Up in the upper left-hand corner here is our area selection tool. And here we can click on the drop-down and we can scroll through a list of available areas. We can filter by different area types, or we can just simply start typing in the map. So we can do any set of, or we can do any of these areas, city, county, or zip code, or MLS area. We also can draw our own areas, and I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. So now I'm looking at Carroll County, and we can further narrow this down to report on just properties that match certain criteria. So we have filters based off of price range, property type, square footage, bedrooms, year built, waterfront type, and waterfront rights. So we can come in here and select any set of this data that we'd like. We're going to, when we go live, we're most likely going to be set up here so that it'll default to single family. But if it doesn't, or if you want to change that, we can obviously report on any of those property types. And then let's also look at, say, for example, 2000 to 2009 built. And maybe we want to do waterfront shared. Now, this is one of the things here that we're going to find is that you can create something that doesn't really exist in nature when you're doing your filters. So when you see something like this is important to understand is it's not that the system's broken, it's just there's nothing to report on. So here we've got probably a single sale that happened a year ago that matches those criteria. And so InfoSparks allows you to get very detailed, but you don't want to get too detailed. So this doesn't replace what you would do with a CMA. This is more of a high-level view of the trends in properties that are similar to a property that you're maybe pricing, or looking with your buyers and you're trying to show them what's happening to properties that are similar to what they're looking for. So you want to start off a bit broader and not get too specific such that you get no data like you just saw there. And so even at this level here, because of the area I'm looking at, the 2000, 2009 built, you do see quite a bit of variation here in pricing, still for that same reason, because it's a smaller set of data points. And so your monthly volatility will be higher because that data set is still pretty small. So we can also look at multiple segments of the market at once. So for example, if I want to look at single family and condo, I can click the plus button next to one of the filters and add it to the list. Or I can click the split button at the top and split them out so I can compare and contrast single family versus condo. And in this case, we're looking at that median sales price. We can also compare and contrast different areas. Using the Add an Area tab here at the top, I can add up to 3 additional locations to compare with. So here I have 4 different locations. You can compare any of those types together, so county versus city, et cetera. And we can see those trends over time as well. A couple of things to keep in mind. First of all, this can end up being overwhelming for a lot of people. Some people are big data nerds like I am, and we love data. And we can absorb as much as you can give us. Others kind of need a little bit more simple points. So while you can compare up to 4 areas at a time, I often find it's simpler to just compare one area to another to keep the point clearer. The other thing to keep in mind is that when you add new areas, the new area you've added, that tab will become the active tab, and it'll initially start off without any filters applied. And so right now we're looking at this, all of the sales in these 2 areas with no filters. We can either apply a set of filters to this tab and see how that reflected in both areas below. Or if I wanted that original set of filters I had created, go back to the first tab here, and the original set of filters I had applied are being applied here now to both areas. So just keep in mind whichever tab is active and the filters you see there, those are what are being applied to the charting. So that's how you can narrow things down into very specific segments of the market. I now want to walk through all of the different metrics that we have available. So we've started off here with median sales price. We can look at average sales price. However, I've always thought that median sales price is more reflective of the market dynamics, simply because with median sales price, it's not going to be skewed significantly by a couple of home sales at the very low end or the high end. That will make almost no difference to a median, but it could substantially alter an average. So in most cases, I think the median is better because in a median sales price, half of homes sold for more, half of homes sold for less. It's kind of like the baby bear. It's just right in the middle. So we can also look at new listings and homes for sale and pending and closed sales as well. There's some other ways we can visualize this data too. So by default, we're looking at a 3-year view, which is actually 3 previous years plus the current year. We can take that down to as little as last year plus the current year. Or we can do my favorite, which is max. And max allows us to go all the way back in time to 2003. So what, just about 20 years here of sales data. Tons of history here. And some of you were in the markets back here, and you can talk about the good old days and then the dark days, and then the good days that came back. So context here is that we can understand what's normal, what's seasonal, what's typical, how have markets been recently, how has that differed from where they were in the past. You can also see some interesting events here. So again, we're looking at pending sales. If you were back in the market in 2010 and you were selling, this was back when we had a first-time homebuyer tax credit and you had to get under contract by the end of April and close, I think, by June or July. And then buyers got, I think it was what, $10,000 at the time. So a whole slew of buyers bought the first half of the year, and then it was kind of like crickets the second half of the year. It was a lot quieter in the market. And so you could see that impact in 2020, how your buyer activity surged higher in 2020, and then how that basically backed off in 2021 and 2022 as well. So you can get the context for different things that have happened in the past, and we can see the seasonality and short-term volatility of different events because we're looking in the monthly view. But we can also switch this over into a rolling period, and I like to use the rolling 12. And so in the rolling 12-month view, what we're doing is we're effectively annualizing the sales activity at every point. So we're saying there were 15,801 pending sales in the 12 months ending August, and that's down 14% from the 12 months before that. And so what would you do with this? Well, it helps you get the sense for those overall long-term trends, what's going on. So we can see that bump in buyer activity, but we can see how buyer activity in your state overall is actually down pre-COVID levels. And on an annualized basis, it makes it just a little easier to see that long-term trend. And then we can get that context for those long-term historical trends in the market as well. So there's a lot that you can see there when you eliminate that volatility that you see with the monthly view. Now, if we go and look at a couple of other metrics here, new listings, I think, is a key one as well, because again, that's your seller activity. New listing seller activity is down 16% from a year ago. And if we roll this up into that rolling 12-month view, we can see that seller activity has been declining now for a couple of years and is significantly lower than your historical averages for sellers. And so this is different than many markets. A lot of markets saw seller activity recover in the last 12 to 18 months to around where it was pre-COVID levels. And so your market, your sellers are more hesitant to put their homes on the market. And then if we look then, your sales and your inventory here goes back into that month supply chart that we've seen before. And again, we can see how your month supply has barely moved at all from last year. And that too is quite a bit different than what we're seeing across much of the country. Month supply has been rising in, I'd say, more than half of markets, probably significantly more than half. And right now, you're pretty much flat for the year. And your inventory is actually even slightly down from last year at this time, which also, too, is different than what we see on a national level. And when we translate all that into pricing, you're sitting basically right at the top of the market here. And, so what's going to happen in the next 12 to 18 months, if I had a crystal ball, I certainly wouldn't be doing this. I'd be retired on a beach island somewhere. But the sense is that while, the old adage is that real estate is local, I think it's really important right now in that what's going on nationally versus locally is going to be very different for many markets. Some markets are going to be going to see significant and have seen significant buyer activity declines and are really kind of in a state of recorrection from a huge bubble of buyer activity the last couple of years. And then you have other areas that are more typical, normal. They didn't go up as much during the housing activity shift here in the last couple of years, so that their activity today isn't slowing as much either. And I would put you more in that category. So while prices have certainly climbed in your market over the last few years, they've climbed even stronger in many markets, and some markets have much more of a roller coaster ride in the last few years here. There's one other visualization that I think is great here, and that's we can switch between a line chart and a bar chart. So in a bar chart format, we can look it up to the last 3 years here in just a very simplified presentation. So here we're looking at the median sales price from 2020, 2021, and 2022, the values, and then at the bottom, that year-over-year change. And so your market had less of an increase than many markets did in price. It was still very strong though. In just a couple of years here, prices have gone up from 350 to 450. That's a huge jump. Like we were talking before, you couple that with the increase in mortgage rates, and that's a huge swing in affordability for buyers in the last few years. And so we have all these different visualizations. We have all this information here, and we want to do something with it, right? So what are our options on sharing this data out? So let's take a look here. Let's do price per square foot is kind of an interesting number. I like to look at price per square foot, particularly if you control for other things like age and property type and location. It's another way to kind of understand what's going on, because new construction can kind of skew numbers one direction or the other. For a period of time, new homes get larger and larger every year, and then they go into a reverse and they start shrinking. So, but price per square foot can be another way to kind of gauge overall value of more consistent type homes. And so, say you love this chart just like I do, and you want to do something with it. What are your options? Well, the first thing you can do here is hit print. And this is going to load up a PDF or Adobe Acrobat file of the chart. At the top, there's some agent branding, and a logo or a photo can be uploaded here. And I'll show you how you can edit your contact info. And then we've got our chart. Any filters that are applied will be down here at the bottom. Shows you that we're looking at this in a monthly chart and that the chart was run today, and where the data came from, which is from your MLS, and reports are made by showing time. So that's the PDF version. If we click the share button here, we have some additional options. First question we're asked is, do we want a static chart or a live chart? Static chart means we're taking a snapshot of the data today. If you come back in a week or in a month, it'll look exactly like you saw today. With the live chart option, every time you come back to the chart, it'll show you the most current data available. And we update InfoSparks every night through the end of the month prior. So we're in September, we're reporting on data through August. Once we hit October, we're going to start reporting on that September sales data in InfoSparks. And if you share out live charts, those charts will get updated too. So most of the time, that live chart will be preferred, simply because you're always looking at the most current data available. Let's look at that social media and email share. When I click the share button, get a URL, I can copy and paste that wherever I'd like to use. But if we hit view a new window, we can take a look at it now. And there's a few things that look a little different than with the PDF. First of all, we have some interactivity here now in the chart, so I can mouse over and actually interact with it. I have share buttons up here to share out quickly to Facebook, Twitter, and others. There's a link in the upper right still to download the PDF. In the bottom, I can download a PNG or a picture of the chart. I can also download a CSV file, which would allow me to create my own chart styles and types. And then finally, simply, I can bookmark this URL because I chose that live chart option. If I bookmark it in my browser, I can come directly back to this chart. I won't have to log in to view it again or recreate it. And also too, I can just come back to this again next month and see the new data. So this is great for charts that you want to use in your regular communications with buyers and sellers or your sphere, or just areas that you want to keep close tabs on. Bookmark those appropriate charts, make sure you use that live chart option, and you save yourself some time. And then finally, we also can share these charts out in an embedded format, which allows you to insert this chart into a website or a blog. So you would choose some of the configuration for it. You then get a snippet of code, and you would want to grab the entire snippet of code and copy and paste that into your website's HTML. When you do that, you'll get something like this. There's still a little bit of agent branding built into the shared chart, and then we have that interactivity like we did before. But imagine the rest of your website's content exists around this chart. So you can create community pages with stats, information that's updated automatically, or you can create a whole statistics page that has number of charts on it. All those will load for you automatically with the latest data available. So it can be an easy way to make sure that you have current content on that website. Now, if you have questions on how to use InfoSparks, we have a little tool tip button here that'll, when you click on that question mark, it'll give you a little box with some text explaining what each of the buttons does. You can also click on this user manual and FAQ, which should work if I don't accidentally get logged out of the system early. So let me log back in here. One moment, please. All right, so let's try this one more time. User manual and FAQ. This will walk you through a short demo video of InfoSparks, and then you can either scroll through the rest of the manual or navigate into things like the metrics section, talks about the metrics in more detail and how they're calculated. And then the share section here talks more about shared charts. They will eventually expire. You get 6 months automatically. And then after that, if they're still periodically accessed, they will be available longer. The details on that are provided there in that highlighted section. And then also up here at the top, clicking on the profile button allows you to upload your agent profile photo or logo, and then update the contact information that displays on those shared charts. Just make sure to hit the update profile button at the bottom. And then the My Areas section is where you can actually come in and you can create your own custom area to run stats on that. So we can simply zoom in and out on the map as we would like. You can also navigate through frequently used areas section here and navigate to any other location that you would like to run stats for. And then just simply start drawing a map, draw your shape however you would like. You can come in here and grab corners and readjust as necessary. If you'd like to draw a circle, you can choose that from the menu at the top and draw a circle instead. You can have multiple shapes if you'd like, delete shapes if you make a mistake. Once you've got the area set up that you want, you can hit save and name it. When you save it, it'll think for a minute, tell you how big of an area you have and how many listings are in it. Just keep in mind that if you're trying to draw, say, like a block on a map, you can do that, but when you translate house numbers into GPS coordinates and then put that into the real world on a map, sometimes those shift a little bit. So if you're trying to be that precise, you're probably better off simply to rely on an MLS search where you can see all the actual individual properties that are included in your search. And then the second thing is this too can suffer from the sample size question. You know, if instead of 9,300 listings, there was 93 listings, well, that would go all the way back to the 2003 period that we start reporting on. And so that's just not a lot of data to work from. So you can certainly chart it, but you're going to probably see a lot of volatility. But with those caveats in mind, let's take a look. So if I click the See Stats link here, I'm loading up that new custom area I just created, and I can look at this data and slice and dice it just like I could any other area that's in the MLS. And then in the future, if I want to come back to an area I've created under the My Areas option here, we can see areas that we've created and load those back up in future visits.